Hello, this is Matthew Lang at... What is this place called again? Crafternoon. Hello, yes, Matthew Lang from Crafternoon in Carlton, in Melbourne. It's a perfect Melbourne day, i.e. grey, muggy and disgusting outside. And I'm here with the fantastic people from Mix, concentrated talent group in Melbourne. Everyone say hi. You can if you want, you don't have to say hi. Say hi, people. Hello. Yes, I'm here with people from Mix, and I'm going to try to do a reading in a cafe, which I've never done before on video, which will be very embarrassing, so here we go. This is the start of The Way You Are, which is just out, I say just out. It's been out since January from Brinsbin and Press. If you like it, please do go and pick it up. The reading I'm doing today is slightly different to the actual book, and is not the whole book, so if you like what I'm doing today, let me know, and I might have another one if I get enough sales. The ward was an unflinching shade of hospital green, the washed-out, chalky colour that Leon had only ever seen in movies. Hospitals, in his admittedly limited experience, were supposed to be a crumbly yellow or a stark modern white, and this one was both, at least on the outside. Walking in from the glare of the spring sun, he wondered if the paint scheme was an attempt to bring the colour to park outside into the hospital, but the dullness of the stereotypical surgical gown green was so different from the vibrant green of the grass and leaves that he quickly decided against it. Stereotypical. Leon suppressed a shudder at the word. It came loaded with meanings and preconceptions, some good, but mostly not. This was, after all, a stereotypical regional city. 2 hours from Sydney by train, Newcastle stretched along the southern bank of the Hunter River, following its curves all the way to the Tasman Sea, where Leon, like most of its residents, took to the glorious sandy beaches and surf spots that were nearly as famous as the city's coal exports and subtropical weather. Here, shops were just starting to stay open after 5 and on Sundays. Chinese takeout bore no relation to China other than the occasional bean sprout and pre-made Western sauce, and everyone who didn't work in the hospital or coal exports eventually left to find a job or a better life somewhere else. Those who stayed behind either owned the place or were absolute deros. Slang for derelict. The original word might be wittier, but derelict has far too many syllables to make a good insult, and besides, Aussies are lazy. If they weren't, they'd call themselves Australians and throw a shrimp on the barbecue rather than on the barbie. Liam was honest enough to admit that that judgment was probably unfair, especially given Chrissy's parents' successful B&B in the eastern end of town, but after going out on that first Saturday night at the Great Northern Hotel and hearing the drunken jeers of bogans driving around the deserted streets in packages with muck brown or faded blue, he too now repeats the mantra that had been passed down from student to new student over the years at the university. When you go out at night, do not make eye contact with the locals.
This could just be 2 pieces of elastic, yeah?
Interestingly, this phrase was never used to refer to the locals that went to university. Whether that says more about the locals or the students using the phrase is a question best left to individual judgment. The University of Newcastle, of course, was a haven for those fleeing even smaller minded country towns, or those who found the notion of city living just a little bit terrifying, or those who couldn't afford or did not get into the big city campuses of Sydney and Melbourne. Leon had found university life free, a mass of thoughtful people willing to live and let live, or even celebrate diversity. It was at university that he first kissed a guy, at university where he met Chrissy, the first person who accepted him for exactly who he was, or Christina if she was meeting boy on a serious date. Then the rumours had begun circulating. He's where? Hospital. What happened? Last heard had several broken bones, internal injuries, and a coma. I thought he was going to get blood. Well, that sounds like a big night out gone wrong. Oh my god, are you talking about Kim Kardashian? Have you seen the photos? What? We're talking about Rook. Rook was invited to Kim Kardashian's party? Oh my god, that is like so... No, Rook is gay bashed. Rook's gay? No way, I dated that bastard. You're saying he drove stick the entire time? Wait, is he like famous or something? No, he's a physio student, looking to transfer into med, and he's straight. And some days later, when the stories had swirled around campus long enough to be published in Opus, the student newspaper, and everyone had moved on to debating Schrodinger's bunnies, Leon finally became aware of what happened. The theory of Schrodinger's bunnies goes as follows. Put 2 random rabbits in a box. Until you open the box, the number of rabbits inside the box is both 2 and greater than 2 at the same time. Students who pointed out that the actual state should also include less than 2, depending on how large the box was, whether or not there were air holes, and whether the food and water were included, and the length of time the box was left for were promptly ridiculed as overly intellectual, and lynched by people who went too much more into the analogy. In any case, that was what had brought Leon into room 14B in the puke green wing of the John Hunt Hospital, named after not 1 but 3 John Hunters, one of whom had nothing to do with medicine whatsoever, but had been instrumental in breaking the news of the newly discovered octopus back in the United Kingdom in 1798, a feat achieved by sending back a sketch of a live animal, and the dead pelt of the first one to be encountered by humans. The notion that the indigenous Australian people had lived in harmony with the harsh environments of Australia for untold centuries somehow counted as humans didn't really become fashionable until 1967. The room wasn't what Leon had been expecting. For starters, it was mostly bare, with 2 ward beds empty and a third containing the limp figure of an aging matron, with a thin white cotton sheet doing little to conceal the bulk. Leon focused his gaze on the furthest corner of the room, where a yellow privacy curtain had been drawn back, allowing sunlight from the nearby window to play over the unmoving figure in the 4th hospital bed. The bed was large to Leon's eyes, and the patient it contained looked a little like a child in comparison, even though Leon knew Rook to be at least 6 inches taller than himself. The bed sheets were tucked around the recumbent figure, still neat and crisp, as if they had just been fitted around his body. Obviously, coma patients didn't move very much. An unused tray table and a soft chair, upholstered in the blue brown that had been ever so popular in the 1950s or some other decade before Leon's time, sat off slightly to one side, a bunch of wilted flowers on the bedside table, and a small stack of get well cards, the only personal touches in an otherwise institutional space. Leon would have expected a scrunched tissue or indented cushion or something, anything to indicate the presence of parents, but apparently they live far out in the middle of Warrick Kwok. Now, Warrick Kwok is another example of Australian slang. Politely, this translates to back of beyond, and less politely to bum fuck nowhere, but probably with less bum and more sheep. At least according to the Kiwis across the pond, but they're just offending, really. The last few days hadn't been kind to him, or as he was known on his patient chart, Travis Rookford. The left side of his face was still swollen and bruised, the skin lacerated with a myriad cut that, according to newspaper sources, had been inflicted by a smashed bottle. One source said that Rook was lucky not to have lost an eye. His right leg was elevated with heavy cuts, and Leon knew that somewhere under the chest bandages were a number of broken ribs, and a lot of internal bruising, and a significant amount of internal bleeding. Hi, Leon said. The only response was a triple fluted snore from the lady in bed 3, and the steady beep, beep, beep from Rook's heart monitor. You probably don't remember me. Actually, I'd be surprised if you did, Leon said, eyes wandering over the tubes that led from Rook's muscled arm to the bag of intravenous fluid hanging from his body with a fall on wheels. I wanted to say thanks for sticking up. Well, not for me specifically, but, well, us, you know? You didn't have to do that. And if you had, you'd probably still be fine, and, well... Leon paused. Maybe you wish you didn't say anything, not that I'd blame you, but, yeah, I wanted to say thanks. As he sat fidgeting in the poo-brown chair, Leon felt foolish, speaking to a man in a coma, whom he knew nothing about. Okay, well, thanks for listening, he said, staring down at his feet. Assuming you can even hear me, that is. You should be able to, the new voice said. Leon literally jumped, tripping over his own feet on the way down. Sorry, the voice said. I didn't mean to startle you. The nurse was young, and Leon guessed he was a student on hospital placement. He had the build of a rugby player with firm muscles barely hidden under the otherwise shapeless green hospital scrubs that he wore. His face was broad, and his hair closely cropped. His skin was either tanned by the sun, or the result of mixed parentage, and the subtle almond shape of his eyes made Leon suspect the latter. Geez, way to give the guy a heart attack. Oh, that's okay, the other man said, grinning just enough to show his teeth. I'm fully trained in CPR and emergency procedures. After all, we are in a hospital.
Hi there.
Then the nurse hesitated. Wait, that was a joke, wasn't it? Kinda?
Yes.
Leon said, somewhat taken aback. Right, sorry, I have a tendency to take things very literally. I see. Leon said, more than a little uncertain. If there was any socially acceptable reply to a phrase like that, there was also the slightly more certain feeling that he was being punched with. Anyway, medically, there are studies that suggest it's good for coma patients to be talked to. Sometimes they can hear at you even if they can't respond, and some say it registers in their subconscious even if they can't consciously hear you. Okay. Leon said, that's good to know. So, you're, the other man asked after a moment of awkward silence. Me? Oh, no, we don't really know each other at all. Right. Nurse's eyebrows rose. Sorry, I just assumed that. I wanted to thank him for what he did, Leon said. He didn't have to, and it means a lot to me. I know, it's stupid and a little bit weird and creepy, and actually I think it's kind of sweet. But there was definitely blood happening. And it's good that you came. He doesn't get very many visitors. I noticed, Leon said, his eyes drifting back to a tiny stack of cards and all the flowers. I'm Leon. Warrick, the big man said, holding his hand. Nice to meet you, Leon. You too, Leon replied, grasping the man's hand. For a moment, the hazel eyes locked unflinchingly with brown, and Leon found it hard to breathe. Then the alarm on his phone went off, startling them both. Sorry, Leon said. Got a motor. Class. Of course. See you later?
When we get back.
Maybe, Leon said, his cheeks flushing slightly as he darted from the room.